There are over 300 recognized mental disorders. Most people can name 3. But the ones you've never heard of are quietly running the lives of people you know. Your coworker, your cousin, maybe even you. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to walk you through every major category of mental disorder, what's actually happening in the brain, and the real-world effects that never make it into the textbook definition. Welcome back to Mind Cipher. This channel exists to decode the human mind, not with fear, not with stigma, but with clarity. Because here's the problem. Most people learn about mental illness from movies, from memes, from a single scary headline. And that gives you a distorted, often harmful picture of what these conditions actually look like. So today, we're doing this properly. We're going category by category. Mood disorders, anxiety disorders, psychotic disorders, personality disorders, and more. Breaking down not just the clinical definition, but the lived effect on relationships, work, and identity. This is not a diagnostic tool. Think of it as a map, so that when you meet these patterns in real life, you recognize them for what they are instead of what fear tells you they are. Let's start with the disorders you think you already understand. Depression is not sadness. Sadness passes. Clinical depression is a persistent state where the brain's reward circuitry essentially goes quiet. Dopamine signaling drops, motivation collapses, and even things that used to bring joy start to feel flat and pointless. The effect isn't just feeling down. It's waking up and needing 30 minutes to convince yourself to get out of bed. It's smiling in a meeting and feeling nothing behind it. Bipolar disorder is often misunderstood as mood swings, but it's closer to 2 different operating systems taking turns running the same brain. In the manic phase, thoughts race, sleep becomes almost unnecessary, and judgment can vanish entirely, leading to impulsive decisions people later can't explain. In the depressive phase, the crash can be severe enough that the person barely resembles who they were weeks earlier. Then there's the anxiety spectrum, which is actually the most common category of mental disorder worldwide. Generalized anxiety disorder keeps the brain's threat detection system, the amygdala, stuck in a low simmer of alert all day, every day, often with no clear trigger. Panic disorder is the same system slamming into overdrive in seconds. Racing heart, shortness of breath, a genuine feeling of dying, even though nothing physically threatening is happening. Social anxiety disorder narrows that same threat response specifically onto other people's judgment. A work presentation or even ordering coffee can trigger a physiological stress response most people only feel in genuine danger. The effect across all of these is the same pattern. The brain's alarm system is miscalibrated, and the person has to live inside that miscalibration every single day. But mood and anxiety disorders are still ones most people have at least heard of. The next category is where most misinformation lives, because these are the disorders Hollywood loves to get completely wrong. Schizophrenia does not mean multiple personalities. That's a different disorder entirely, and one of the most common misconceptions in psychology. Schizophrenia involves a disruption in how the brain filters and organizes reality, which can produce hallucinations, delusions, and disorganized thinking. The effect is profound. The person isn't choosing to see or believe things. Their brain is generating a version of reality that feels completely real to them, which is exactly why it's so difficult to treat with logic alone. Obsessive-compulsive disorder is often reduced to liking things clean, but clinically, it's a loop. An intrusive, unwanted thought creates intense anxiety, and a compulsive behavior temporarily relieves that anxiety, which reinforces the loop and makes it stronger over time. The effect isn't tidiness. It's spending hours a day trapped in rituals the person logically knows are irrational but cannot stop. Post-traumatic stress disorder reshapes how the brain stores and retrieves memory after an overwhelming event. The amygdala becomes hyperreactive, while the hippocampus, responsible for context and time-stamping memories, often shrinks in activity. The effect is that a trauma can feel like it's happening right now, even years later, triggered by a sound, a smell, or a date on the calendar. And then there are personality disorders. Long-term, deeply ingrained patterns of thinking and relating to others. Borderline personality disorder often involves intense fear of abandonment paired with emotional reactions that escalate faster and last longer than most people's. Narcissistic personality disorder involves a fragile sense of self hidden behind a need for admiration. Antisocial personality disorder involves a reduced capacity for empathy and a disregard for social rules. These aren't about being difficult. They're about a nervous system and self-concept that developed along a fundamentally different path. We've covered the disorders people fear and the disorders people misunderstand. But there's a final category almost nobody talks about. The ones that quietly shape a person's entire relationship with their own body and mind. Eating disorders are frequently dismissed as being about food or about vanity. They're not. Conditions like anorexia and bulimia are deeply tied to control, identity, and often trauma. Food becomes the battlefield, not the cause. The effect reaches far beyond eating habits, touching self-worth, social withdrawal, and physical health in ways that can be life-threatening. ADHD is not a lack of discipline. It's a difference in the brain's dopamine regulation and executive function, the system responsible for planning, prioritizing, and following through. The effect is a mind that can hyper-focus intensely on something interesting for 6 hours, and yet be completely unable to start a 2-minute task it finds boring, no matter how important that task is. Autism spectrum conditions involve differences in social communication and sensory processing. Not a deficiency, but a different operating system for engaging with the world. The effect can include sensory overwhelm in environments most people find perfectly normal, alongside genuine strengths in pattern recognition and focus. And addiction, whether substance-based or behavioral, hijacks the brain's dopamine reward pathway, the same system evolution built to make food and connection feel good. Over time, the brain recalibrates around the addictive behavior as the new baseline, which is why willpower alone so rarely works as a solution. The effect is a brain that has been chemically retrained to prioritize the addiction over almost everything else, including relationships and self-preservation. Here's the pattern running underneath everything we just covered. Every single one of these disorders is the brain doing exactly what brains do: adapting, protecting, reacting, just calibrated differently than what we've decided is typical. None of this is a character flaw. It's neurology. So that's the real landscape of mental disorders. Not the Hollywood version, not the meme version, but the actual mechanics behind mood, anxiety, psychotic, personality, eating, neurodevelopmental, and addictive conditions. If you recognize someone you know in any of this, or even recognized yourself, that's not a diagnosis, but it might be a reason to have an honest conversation with a professional. Understanding these patterns doesn't just build empathy for other people. It gives you a clearer lens for your own mind, too. If this broke down something you'd been trying to understand for years, hit subscribe. This is exactly the kind of psychology we dig into every week on Mind Cipher. Drop a comment telling me which disorder you want a full deep dive on next, because a couple of these deserve their own dedicated video. And if you want to understand the mind even further, click the video on screen right now. I think you're going to want to watch that one next.